Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Scary Stories, the series where we relive and retell your true creepy encounters. Today's episode is a little bit different. That's because we'll be heading east to the land of the rising sun, the one and only Japan, home to amazing technology, food, animation, you name it. But as you'll find out, it also has its fill of creepy. So let's sit back and let's take a listen to these true encounters from Japan. Number 1. Creepy Agent Man. For starters, I wanted to just quickly mention, a month ago I sent in a story titled The Snapchat Stalker to the Creepy Fox. It was about some creep who made me believe I was talking to my friend Reen on Snapchat, a student who attended my college from Japan. It pretty much involved a dude who had overheard a conversation Reen and I were having at Starbucks, in which I exchanged my social media information with her. Well, as I later found out, he was obsessed with me, and he actually broke into my home, where police officers soon arrested him. That wasn't without the police finding duct tape and rope in the back of his van. Now, though that story has nothing to do with this next creepy encounter, I wanted to bring it up because it once again involves my friend Reen. Except instead of taking place in the United States, it takes place in Japan. You see, after that nightmarish encounter with my obsessed stalker, Reen had told me she was going to go back to Tokyo to visit her family for the summer vacation. I was pretty bummed, especially considering we had grown to be fast friends these past 2 semesters. And I couldn't think of what it would be like spending my summer alone. That's why Reen asked if I wanted to join her and take a trip across the Pacific Ocean to the land of the rising sun. I was ecstatic, and with further confirmation from Reen's parents, I excitedly packed up a couple of suitcases, and soon we boarded a plane and we arrived a day later. Now let me just say this. That month I spent in Japan were some of the happiest of my life. I enjoyed learning about the culture, eating delicious food, and just spending time in the countryside, playing piano with Reen. However, not everything is filled with cherry blossoms. It seems that creeps followed me wherever I went. Also, before continuing, I wanted to go ahead and mention that any conversations that are going to be featured in this retelling are automatically going to be changed to English. That way it's easier for you to all understand, instead of going back and forth between English and Japanese. Which, if you haven't listened to my previous story, you'll know I studied Japanese and understand quite a bit. Now back to the story. I guess being this 24-year-old blonde girl with blue eyes was a pretty rare sight in this part of the world. After all, I looked very different from the locals, but everywhere I went, people complimented me with kindness. That's until this evening in question. Reen had taken me to Akihabara, a downtown district that is well known for Japanese electronics and animation. Buildings and advertisements were filled with cutesy characters, and you even saw people dressed up in cosplay. I remember Reen taking me to this cat cafe, where you paid a small fee to, you guessed it, drink coffee and play with cats. We spent a good 45 minutes there. However, about halfway through, we couldn't help but notice this older man, I'd say early 40s, with long brown hair, a blue hospital mask, and a hat, who was continuously looking at us. I first noticed it when I looked over at the man, and he quickly turned his attention back to the cats. A couple of minutes later, we moved to a different room so we could play with some other kittens. It's there Reen and I overhear the man ask a waitress if he could join me and my friend Reen. That might have been normal, if it wasn't for the fact we heard him call us his daughters. Yeah, right. Reen and I laughed it off, but he soon joined our room regardless. Not trying to be rude and giving him the benefit of the doubt, we played with the kittens, while this man just sat on the ground, still staring at Reen and I. If you're really so interested, then why don't you just take a picture? Reen tells the man in a jokingly and disgusted tone. The man then responds by saying he's an agent with a modeling company, and he's looking for college students around our age to try on their latest clothing line. We tell him we weren't interested, but he kept insisting. He even goes as far as to offer us money for more photos. I remember slapping him so hard, a waitress actually walks over to the room and asks if everything was alright. We don't even explain what had happened. We instead storm out of that cafe. Unfortunately, that's not the end of the story. It was only going to get worse. You see, we couldn't help but notice the man following us. He did keep his distance. However, he appeared to be talking to someone on his cell phone. Now, considering how many people were in the area, we didn't really think of locating the police. After all, we had this false sense of security. After a few blocks, we no longer saw the creep, so we assumed he finally lost interest. So we now focused on getting some shopping done. Fast forward about 2 hours later, it's already nighttime and it's time to head back to Reen's place. While we waited for an Uber next to an alley in a more quiet part of the city, we were able to see a familiar face staring at us from across the street. It was the man from the cafe. Except, something was different. He walked with confidence, almost as if he was up to something. We would soon be led into this idea when Reen and I start to walk away from him, only to see another chilling sight. 2 men in similarly dressed dark trench coats are holding what look to be like knives, and they're inching their way closer. We had no idea, but these 2 were working alongside the guy from the cafe.
"Those are the 2 girls I told you about. Get them."
We hear the original man instruct these 2. All of a sudden, it's like a switch flipped in their head, and these 2 men in trench coats begin to run after Reen and I, like a pair of hungry lions. We book it down the street, but not before the original creeper tries to cut us off. He manages to grab Reen's arm, but she bites him, causing him to let go momentarily. Roughly 15 to 20 seconds later, we reach a shopping center, and we run into a pharmacy that had about 3 other customers. Who we later found out was the manager asked why we were so out of breath, and we explained we were being chased by 3 men in trench coats. Apparently, this wasn't the first time something like this happened, and she immediately calls the Japanese police. Meanwhile, Reen and I are in the back room waiting for help to arrive. Well, thankfully it seemed we ended up getting a break, because when we walked out of the pharmacy 10 minutes later, we see the 3 guys in trench coats being put in the back of police cruisers. Naturally, there was a crowd of onlookers. I guess this was a pretty rare sight. Anyways, one of the officers had described to both myself and Reen, these 3 men had been wanted for quite some time. They were considered armed and dangerous, as they would try to lure college students around my age, using a modeling agency that doesn't exist as their cover story. Not sure how the cafe owners didn't recognize the guy, but I guess when he's wearing one of those blue hospital masks and a convincing wig and hat, it makes it hard to identify people. Nevertheless, officers dropped Reen and I at her place, and the officers caught Reen's parents up on the creepy encounter. That was pretty much all there was to it. It did ruin what was supposed to be a fun and uneventful vacation. But hey, at least it gives you all something scary to listen to. Before we continue, I want to take this opportunity to thank my channel members: Robbie, Bo, Kim, Spunky the Nutcase, Ingrid, Evil's Girl, Corey, Zombie Mama, Haiti, Benjamin, Tabitha, Scott, and our newest member, Sean. Glad to have you all. Now, if you'd like to help support what I do here on the channel while getting early access to new uploads and video shoutouts, then make sure to check out the channel memberships. You can find it next to where it says subscribe, or you can head directly to my channel and find it there. As these are unpredictable times with me being furloughed from my work, any support is greatly appreciated. Thanks. Now let's continue. Number 2. Undercover Officer or Burglar? Hey there, fan of yours from Japan. I love listening to your Home Alone stories, and I wanted to go ahead and send you mine because it's downright creepy. This took place approximately 12 years ago, when I was still living at home with my mom and dad, out in the countryside. This would put me at around 15 years old. Also, for added context, I'm male. Anyways, it was summer vacation, and both my parents were at work. Meanwhile, I enjoyed staying in my room playing video games and eating junk food. Now, I should also mention that we did have a few neighbors, but they were so spread apart, we rarely saw one another. Also, they were elderly and they tend to mind their own business as it was. This is important to mention because I was never really bothered when I was home alone. Well, I want to say it was about 3 p.m., and someone actually started knocking at their front door. Now, I was and still am very paranoid, which was why I decided not to answer. However, considering the elderly folks, I began to feel guilty. What if something had happened to one of them? And what if they needed my assistance? This thought alone was enough for me to exit my room and slowly make my way to the living room. I looked out the window, and I could see a man in a police uniform, holding what appeared to be like a postal bag. That was strange, as I remember the mail had been delivered just an hour earlier, plus the mailman has a different uniform. Bear in mind, he has been knocking non-stop for the past 2 minutes, and he hasn't said a word. Well, as I wasn't looking to be getting any answers to this man's identity, I start to make my way back to my room, only to be interrupted by the man's voice.
Is anyone home? This is the police.
That gave me an answer. However, before opening the front door, I asked the man from the safety of my home what he was doing all the way out here in the middle of nowhere. I'll go ahead and translate what he told me next.
We're investigating a crime that took place just the other night. We have been told by your neighbors you might have some information. May I please come in?
Now, before continuing, let me tell you why I started to grow suspicious. For one, his looks. Normal police officers are clean-shaven, and they have a clean haircut. This guy looked as if he had just stepped out of a mechanic shop. He had an unshaven stubble and long, greasy black hair. Plus, his so-called uniform was filled with grease stains. Anyways, back to what I was saying. As far as I knew, I hadn't heard of any sort of crime taking place, and I was pretty sure my parents would have been the first to know. Once again, I asked him why he needed to come into my house, going further to explain that I can give him my statement through the door, but he kept insisting I open up. This was the point when I started to get a bit suspicious. You see, I saw no police vehicle anywhere near my home. The only vehicle that was parked was just this beat-up van that reeked of suspicion. When I asked if he had driven to my home in that van, he claims he was off duty and was investigating for the police department, as they were apparently very busy trying to find the culprits. Can you show me any identification or badge through my window so I know you're truly with the police? I can hear him let out a disgruntled sigh, and then he walks over to my window and he shows me a piece of paper that looked as if it had been ripped out of some police catalog. The badge itself looked suspiciously fake. It was settled. I wasn't opening the door until my parents got home. Well, my parents aren't home, so please, come back later and you can speak to them then.
No. Open the door right this instant, or I'm going to have to take you into custody for your failure to cooperate.
I'm not even joking. All of a sudden, his professional demeanor switched to that of someone who is on something, because he started cursing at me and trying to punch out the window, and I'm pretty sure that hurt. By this point, I was on the phone with actual police, and I told them there was some man trying to break into my home who claimed he was with the police. You better leave right now. I already called the police and they're on their way, I tell him, hands shaking and fear driving me cold. No joke, this guy books it out of there like no one's business, and the police arrive 20 minutes later, where I'm soon questioned. Just as I expected, there was no sort of criminal activity that took place anywhere near my home. Not only that, but no officer in their department, or any for that matter, would go inside your home without a warrant. Thank goodness for the countless hours of police dramas I watched. Anyways, with the help of my description, including the vehicle, The man was actually caught less than a week later, where he was connected with a bunch of home burglaries. Here's the part that gives me the chills. Each time he robbed a home, he pretended to be with a different company and an agency. He used the cover of being a technician, an electrician, and in my case, a police officer. Needless to say, the police complimented me on my so-called questioning and my detective skills. So I guess there was one bonus to this nightmare. Number 3. Thank goodness for my cast. This happened a few years ago while I was doing some shopping for my family at a supermarket. For quick context, I'm female, and I'm originally from Minnesota, but I moved to Kyoto, Japan with my husband, where we settled down and we had a family. This is important to mention because I stood out from all the locals. Not that I didn't mind the added attention. After all, everyone here in Japan is super sweet, and thus I'm the same way back to them. Now, something else I want to note is that I have just recently broke my arm, and thus I was repping a cast that had the names of my coworkers and my kids signed on it. Because, that's the first thing you do when you get a cast. Anyways, I was doing our typical shopping for the week, and I'd been in the vegetable section when a man approached me asking if I needed any assistance. As I had my back turned to him, I first thought I was hearing the voice of an employee. However, I soon noticed it's just a fellow shopper. No, I'm okay. I think I can handle grabbing a couple of groceries all by myself. He kept on insisting, saying how a beautiful woman like myself shouldn't have to do groceries on her own. I thank him for the compliment, and again I tell him I was fine on my own. But my acknowledgement of his question was like an invitation for him to start asking me more questions.
How did you break your arm, if you don't mind me asking?
I give him a generic answer, hoping he would leave me alone. But then he asks me if I was seeing anyone, which was then followed by asking me if I would like to get a drink with him. I assure him I was happily married, and I wasn't interested, and this was enough to drive him insane.
Why did you just look at me like you were interested, huh? You were giving me hints. Now you're telling me it was all a lie?
Let me get one thing straight. I had never met this man in my entire life. Not only that, I never even noticed him in the half hour I'd been shopping. Either way, I just begin walking away from him, but he keeps up pace, cursing at me, and calling me all these names. This grabs the attention of a couple of other shoppers who come to my defense. One man in particular, who was way taller than this weirdo, pretty much told him off. But that's not before a security guard noticed and escorted the man out of the store. Everyone who had been watching let out an audible cheer, happy that this creepy guy was out of our lives. But this was just the beginning of this nightmare. Fast forward approximately 20 or so minutes later to just a little past 8 p.m., and I'm walking by my vehicle, shopping cart in hand. All of a sudden, the creepy man from the store steps out from behind a couple of vehicles, and he says,
So, are you happy that you made an embarrassment of me? All I wanted was a chance to take you out to dinner.
Once again, I remind him I was happily married, as he begins to approach me, with my shopping cart being my only wall of defense. Without even getting another word out, he takes out a pocket knife and lunges at me, grabbing my good arm in the process. Let go. I already told you I'm not interested in going to dinner with you.
Too late. I've already made up my mind. I'm taking you by force.
Just so you get a picture, the parking lot is pretty empty, and the lighting is pretty horrendous. In those moments that felt like they went in slow motion, I thought of an excellent idea. Using my arm with the cast, I smack him with all of my might on the side of the head. This was enough to get him to let go. However, I can't even begin to describe how much it hurt when I connected with his noggin. Anyways, I book it and scream like a little girl, managing to get the attention of some shoppers who were exiting the supermarket. By the time I look into the parking lot, I can no longer see the man. This didn't stop me from getting the security guard and having him contact the Japanese authorities. Unfortunately, he was never caught, and to this day, his identity remains a mystery. Number 4. Neighbor to the rescue. I lived in Japan as part of a study abroad program during my junior year of university. This would put me at 22 years old. Also for context, I'm originally from Sydney, Australia, and I'm female. Anyways, I was living in Kyoto, Japan, in a small apartment complex that was just a few blocks from my university. This made attending classes that much more convenient. Speaking of conveniency, I was pretty close to a shopping center, which would allow me to buy groceries as well as go study at the coffee shops. Also, on the subject of going out, every person I met in Japan was very friendly and respectful. I can't tell you how many times this one elderly woman would give me a hug anytime I visited her small flower shop. She would even give me flowers to take back to my apartment. But of course, I'm not going to spend this entire submission talking about the nice things. I know what you want to hear, the creepy stuff. And I got something that will have you checking your doors and windows at night. About 1 month into the semester and my move to Kyoto, I ended up getting a new neighbor. He was a college student around my age, and he appeared to be very shy and to himself. Considering how lively I am, I think he might have been a little intimidated, as he best reminded me of a typical nerd. Not that I have an issue with nerds. I love them. In fact, nerds are awesome. Anyways, one day I returned from class, and he was sitting outside on his chair watching something on his iPod. Being the friendly girl I am, I take the opportunity to introduce myself, as well as ask for his name. He told me his name was Itsuki, and he mentions how surprised he was with my Japanese. I told him I'd studied Japanese for 4 years prior to my arrival, and we soon hit it off. Fast forward about a month, and we become pretty close friends. Each weekend when we were done with studying, we would take turns watching anime and playing video games at each other's places, laughing and sharing good vibes. Eventually, I started to hang out with him less and less because I got in a boyfriend. It didn't last too long, however, because I soon learned how controlling he was. He would tell me I wasn't allowed to talk to Itsuki, even suggesting he would beat him up if he got too close. I loved Itsuki like a brother, and that really upset me. But perhaps the breaking point was when Itsuki came over to my place to give me some extra ramen noodle packets he had bought, only for my boyfriend to curse him out. When I told my boyfriend to knock it off, he slaps me, causing me to fall on my bum, and then he walks off. Let's just say he had some of the most unkind words to say over me to the phone, claiming I was cheating on him, etc., etc. That was when I decided to call it off. Fast forward a few days later, and he started to send me a bunch of graphic messages that I'd rather not mention here. In summary, they were just about how he was going to get revenge for me breaking his heart, and it was only a matter of time before he showed up. I still don't know why I didn't report him to campus police or security, but I guess part of it was because I was naive. Well, little did I know this naive mindset was going to get me into lots of trouble. It was the week before finals, and I was staying at the library longer than usual, studying alongside Itsuki. After getting some ramen at one of our favorite ramen shops, we returned back to our apartment, ready to hit the bed and get some shut-eye. However, before I enter my apartment, I'm reminded that I left my USB drive in Itsuki's room, and I needed to get it. Itsuki tells me he would grab it for me and bring it over in a minute. I accept the offer, and I tell him I would be in my room. Itsuki then enters his apartment, and I enter mine. But here's the catch. My apartment door was unlocked. That was strange. Sure, I am a bit naive, but I knew I had locked it before I got here. Whatever, I thought. I was too tired to think it over. I start to make my way to my room, but then all of a sudden, I hear a thud. I froze, because it didn't sound as if it came from Itsuki's living space. Suddenly, I hear a familiar voice. It was my ex-boyfriend, and he's got a knife.
I told you I was coming back for revenge. Now you owe me something I've been without for weeks.
He starts to get closer. All the while, I'm standing there with my books, frozen in fear. "What are you doing? Move!" I hear Itsuki shout from the front door. That was enough for me to snap out of it and drop my books, and then run over to my friend. But to be honest, I was so scared he was going to go after Itsuki, but I learned something this day that made me so thankful. Itsuki was a black belt in martial arts, and he had training with disarming people. Within seconds, he's taken control of the knife, and he has my ex in a pretty painful looking arm hold. Best way to describe it is the Kimura lock Brock Lesnar from WWE uses. While this is happening, I caught the attention of a couple of other neighboring students who came to help out Itsuki. By the time everything was over, the police handcuffed my ex, and they took him in for more questioning. And that was pretty much all there was to the story. I never saw my ex-boyfriend again, and I left back to Australia 6 months later. Side note, I still keep in contact with Itsuki all these years later. In fact, my new boyfriend actually plays with him on PlayStation. They're very close friends, even though they've never met in real life. The nice thing is Itsuki is getting married this fall, and he invited us to go visit him. I just hope all this stuff that's happening in the world with a certain you-know-what, which is preventing us from traveling, will be over soon, so we can travel safely and visit my amazing friend. Number 5. I thought it was a joke. What do a couple of office workers do after a long and tiring week of computer programming? Go out for dinner and drinks, of course. That's what I did alongside 2 other co-workers a few weeks ago. For some context, I'm 32 years old, male, and this takes place in downtown Tokyo. Anyways, we decided to head to a ramen shop that was tied in with an arcade and a bar. It was the perfect place to be in on Friday nights, especially when you're a single adult. This was perfect, because we could hit up the bar, which is what we did. Fast forward to around 2 in the morning, and my friends had now left me, and I'm waiting for an Uber to pick me up at the corner of the street. Bear in mind, the streets were pretty empty, and the only thing keeping me company were the street lights above me. While I waited for my ride, looking at my phone, I began to hear somebody's footsteps approaching me. It was a man, I want to say mid-30s, wearing an oversized jacket and keeping his hands in his pocket.
"Hey, give me your wallet and your phone."
I hear a mutter in a silent tone as I take a look at this man. "Excuse me? But is that some sort of joke? No way."
"I'm not playing with you. Hand over your phone and your wallet, now."
He pushes me ever so slightly, taking out a small blade in the process. Now, I'll admit, I was a bit tipsy, which was why I first thought this was some sort of prank. "Okay, you guys, you can come out now. I get it. You're still mad at me for the prank I pulled on you guys at work. That's enough," I say out loud, thanking my coworkers and told this random stranger to pretend to rob me. All of a sudden, I feel a cold grasp, and then my phone is taken out of my hands. The guy books it, and he starts heading down an alleyway. I sort of stood there confused for a few seconds, but then I entertained the idea that this was actually real. I start running after him, even though looking back it was a very dangerous idea. The next minute is me trying to keep up with this stranger, which eventually lands us on a more populated street. "Hey, give me back my phone. Somebody stop that man. He just robbed me." I was in luck. A police officer had just so happened to be patrolling the area, and he heard my calls for help. He chases after the man, and soon tackles him to the ground and puts him in handcuffs. I spend the next couple of minutes explaining what had just happened to me, all the while the guy who had just robbed me is acting like he was the victim. Well, after the officer did a quick search of his history on his little computer, he found out that this wasn't the first time he was in trouble with the law. Sadly, I didn't find out what he had done, so I just took the officer's word. Robber is taken away. Meanwhile, another officer drove me back home. I pretty much slept the rest of that day, and I woke up in the evening to tell my friends about what had happened. They too were pretty freaked out by the incident, but they were thankful that nothing had happened to me. Before we get to the final story, I just wanted to go ahead and give you all a quick reminder. If you're ever looking for extra content, whether it be art, previews, or sneak peeks, then make sure to follow me over on my Instagram @TheCreepyFoxOfficial. Thank you. I'll see you there. But for now, let's get on to our final entry. Number 6. Held up at 7-Eleven. Every year in September, our high school holds an assembly to determine where our school will travel to next. It was part of an educational program to teach students about different countries, as well as grow as individuals. I had actually signed up during my sophomore year, in which we visited Europe. It was a lot of fun, and I still remember my friends and I getting lost from our tour group in Paris. Not to say it wasn't fun, since we took advantage of being separated from the group to go visit places we didn't have time for. But as much fun as the Europe tour was, this year was planning to be another main event. Our high school decided we would be going to Japan. My friends and I screamed like little kids when the announcement was made, because we'd always dreamed about visiting Japan. Being into video games just added to this overall ecstatic atmosphere. Anyways, after much convincing, my parents ended up agreeing. However, there was a catch. I had to spend that whole school year working with my father at our family-owned bakery in order to earn enough money. It was worth it, and when the day the trip arrives, my parents dropped me off at school, where I met up with two of my other friends. We will call them Jeremy and Eric. Fast forward a day later, and we land in Tokyo bright and early in the morning. Naturally, we were jet-lagged, but our excitement was enough to fuel us to keep going for the rest of that day. After getting our luggage, we're met by a huge tour bus that takes us to this really fancy hotel that our group would be staying at. The hotel was right across the way from a ginormous shopping mall. I'd never seen anything like that in my 17 years. I remember all the girls in the group of about 100 high school students jumping with joy, not being able to wait to get their hands on all the neat fashion lines. But first, we had to check into the hotel, which, wow, what a process that was. It took almost 3 hours to get every student and parent supervisor checked in. But at last, myself, Jeremy, Eric, 2 other students and our parent supervisor head up to our room. And let me just say, our school wasn't cheap. They went all out by giving us a private suite. It gave you an entire view of the city, and you could even make out Mount Fuji, which we would be visiting a few days later. Anyways, we're told that today is a free day, considering we had just landed, but we were still required to have supervision anywhere we went. I was finally starting to feel the effects of the flight, which was why I decided to stay behind while everyone in the group, including Jeremy and Eric, went out with our adult supervisor to do some shopping. The next few hours were uneventful, and I woke up about 6 hours later and I saw a bunch of shopping bags on the bed. However, I saw no signs of my group. I'd get an answer to this mystery when I check our WhatsApp chat, and I see they had advised me they were going to take a walk at the park. They told me if I wasn't awake by 7 p.m., they would come get me, since we were all going to have dinner at 7:30. Considering it was 5, I had quite a lot of time to blow. That's why I decided to walk around the hotel and see what sorts of neat services they offered. The typical spas, swimming pools, buffets, etc. were among the list of services. But you know one thing I couldn't find? Well, at least at an affordable price. Some chips and soda. Luckily, I saw a 7-Eleven through the front doors, but right as I'm about to head over there, a familiar voice calls me over. It was another student from another group who asked if I could do some translation, since I'm half Japanese. This ended up taking longer than expected, and I soon put the idea of going to 7-Eleven behind me. However, don't forget that 7-Eleven, because that's where my creepy event is going to take place. Anyways, We fast forward to later that evening. It's approaching midnight and everyone is already fast asleep, except for me. Guess that was the downside to sleeping all day. I remember just watching a bunch of random things on my phone before I got a brilliant idea. Wouldn't it be neat to leave the hotel? Looking back, that was the worst decision I could have made, but I made it nonetheless. I exit my room as quietly as I could, and then I start to sneak my way to the elevator. I was actually very close to being caught by one of the adult supervisors, who had just walked up the stairs, presumably to head back to the room. After that close call, I take the elevator to the front lobby, and I walk outside unchallenged. Now remember the 7-Eleven I mentioned a bit ago? You guessed it. I decided to walk over there, even though it's midnight, and that's the hour when the crazies come out and play. When I walk into the 7-Eleven, I'm greeted by the cashier, who was a middle-aged man. He was really friendly, and he told me to ask him anything if I had any questions. Now, at the time, there were two other customers who were sitting at one of the inside tables drinking some coffee and eating some sandwiches. I wished them a good evening as I passed by them to grab my snacks. And here was when things got really scary. As I turned the corner to go and pay, I see a man walk into the 7-Eleven. He's in a trench coat, and he's wearing a hospital mask with his hands in his pocket. He was very suspicious. Anyways, I'm paying when all of a sudden, there's a gunshot. I froze when I turned behind me and I see the man is holding a gun.
This is a robbery. Everyone be quiet and do as I say.
I can safely admit I may have peed myself a little bit, but could you really blame me?
You there. Come over here. I can use somebody like you.
He was referring to me. Look, sir, I don't want any trouble. I'm just a high school student trying to get some snacks, okay?
That's not a problem, because as long as everyone follows my directions, you're going to be safe.
He then grabs my arm with a tight grasp and pulls me next to him.
Okay, cashier. Put all the money you have in the bag, or he gets it.
I can still remember him saying. The cashier wastes no time putting the money in the bag, while I'm standing there frozen, thinking of some sort of plan to get out of this mess. What could I do? I mean, what if he didn't keep his promise? That's why I started to panic even more. Finally, I made a decision to fight back. Now, I don't think he was expecting it because he was very slow to react. In one quick motion, while the pistol is pointed away from me, I take the opportunity to poke him in the eyes, which was risky, but it worked. Using the hand that had been holding my arm, he lets go and reaches for his face. I then move out of the way and grab the pistol, which he had loosened from his grasp. I then manage to secure it, and this guy steps back with his hands up.
I was just joking. Put that thing down. That's not a toy.
The shoe was now on the other foot. He runs out of the 7-Eleven, only to be tackled down by a couple of the onlookers. They then keep him detained until the Japanese police arrive and arrest him. Let's just say I got in quite a lot of trouble for sneaking out of the hotel when I wasn't supposed to, but it was forgiven when my school found out I had prevented a pretty serious armed robbery. In the end, I was deemed a hero, and I even got a medal to take home as recognition from the police department. So that was the time I went to Japan, and I stopped an armed robber, becoming a hero in the process. Hello everybody, it's the Creepy Fox wanting to say thank you for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a thumbs up, make sure to leave a comment telling me what you all thought, and if you haven't already done so, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell beside it. That way you know when it goes bing, there's a new upload by the Creepy Fox, you gotta go check it out. But hey, it's been a while, hasn't it? It's been about, 3 or 4 videos or so that I've done an outro. The reason I haven't done one recently is because I've been really busy with getting content to all of you. As you saw this week with this video, I got you 3 videos. Normally I only do 2, but since I had a little bit more time, I was able to do 3 uploads, so that's kind of a cool thing. How are you doing? I hope you're doing well. Like, all things considered, things are they're pretty cuckoo, they're pretty crazy. As we all know, people are trying to stay sane in the main brain, as they say. I'm staying sane, as it will. Making videos for you all and trying to keep myself busy. When I'm usually not recording and stuff, I'm usually with my parents or I'm playing with my pets. Just trying to stay positive during these really crazy times. So, hey, does everybody remember that Steam Hams meme from 2018, the Simpsons meme? Well, if you're not following me on Instagram, which, what are you waiting for? Go do it. I'm pointing right at you. Go do it now. Just because I upload funny little silly things along with the artwork and the previews, but I actually did a dub of the Steam Hams meme. If you wanted to go ahead and check it out, it should be my newest post. You'll get a good laugh. Obviously I can't upload it here because I would get in trouble because copyright. Okay, let's go ahead and forget about that for right now, because right now it's time for my favorite part of the video. It's where we go back to previous comments and we read what you had to say. So let's see what you all had to say, because I'm pretty sure there's quite a lot that you've left me. Okay, first comment. Ooh, I think I finally watched every video so far. Thank you for this. Ooh, I better make sure I make some more videos soon, because I do not want you having to wait longer for more videos. That is not good. I will make sure to get videos out to you as fast as I can. Ooh, I really like this comment. Awesome. My daughter was born, and now these dark and deep web stories. Well, congratulations on the birth of your daughter. That is so amazing to hear. I'm wishing you and your family all the best. Okay. Hope you never quit, and I'm assuming this was a typo. Literally best voice to fall asleep to. Thank you. Been here since 10K. Keep up the videos. I sure will. Also, are there any animated stories coming soon? So if you didn't see the last outro, which like I said, it's been a while. Oops. I gotta do these more often because I like talking to all of you. I like being on camera. If you go ahead and go on YouTube and you search Denny Animations The Creepy Fox, they're a narration channel / animation channel who actually animated some of the stories I've done. So make sure to go check it out and show it some love, because I'm sure you're gonna love them. Happy belated birthday. Aw, thank you. For those of you who didn't know, my birthday was on April 13th. I actually posted some thank you messages over on my Instagram on April 13th, which was really awesome to share the love with everybody, because it was my 28th birthday. I'm almost at 30 years old. That's crazy to think. 3 decades old. Oh, man. I'm an old man. I'm already, my hair's all crazy right now. I can see some white in my beard coming out. I spent all my day at the stores for your birthday. Oh, hope you had some cake and your favorite ice cream. I sure did. My mom got my sister and I, because if you didn't know, I am a fraternal twin. I don't think I've ever told you all that. Well, now you know. And we had some awesome red velvet cake and some ice cream, which was really delicious. Your narrations make my morning coffee even more enjoyable. You know, I could go for some coffee right now. Ooh, I love coffee. It's been a while. I hope you have a nice evening. Well, I hope you have yourself a nice evening as well. Yes, one of my favorite horror story categories. Also, thanks. So she's referring to the truck driver stories, because yeah, I don't think I've ever done truck driver stories on my channel. And I'm sure those of you that have been following me for a while, you'll probably be able to confirm that, because I do so many of these videos, it's sometimes hard to keep track of what topics I've done and what topics I haven't. So if you're a truck driver out there and you want to send in a truck driving story, make sure to do so we could do a part 2. Hey, here we've got one of our awesome channel members, Bo. Thank you for another great video. Always enjoy the stories you have. Hope Disney opens up soon so we can all go back to working. Thanks, Creepy Fox. You're welcome. And yeah, I hope it opens soon, because if the rumors are believed to be true, it's not opening until 2021, which fingers crossed, that's not going to be the case, because I miss my Disney pals and I miss being at Disneyland. So sad. Okay, last comment. Your stories get better and better. Well, remember, they're not my stories, they're everybody's stories because they're the ones that are being sent in from all of you, which I gotta say, the stories have been getting pretty crazy and intense, but we like scary stories, so that's good. As does the artwork. Well, I'm glad you like the artwork too. Shout out to Yeah Man TV Productions. Awesome guy if you haven't checked him out, and he creates all the artwork for the videos. Thank you. Okay, the fact that they're brand new makes them well worth waiting for. Stay safe, Foxy. So yeah, that's the cool thing about the channel, is I really go out of the way to make sure you get brand new stories. Of course, it comes down to a trust thing. As long as you're all sending in stories exclusively to my channel, then we can ensure we're always getting brand new stories, which, as we all know, is a good thing. Okay, I think that's going to wrap it up for me as I move back and forth. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Like I said, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you are brand new. And until next time, I will see you then. I am the Creepy Fox. And like I said, go make sure to watch that Steam Hams dub I did on Instagram. You're going to get a good laugh. Talk to you all then. Bye-bye.